Today on the Diz List, we talk about the top 5 reasons to rope drop at Walt Disney World.
Welcome to the Diz List, the podcast that lists everything in Walt Disney World. I'm Nick.
And I'm Rob, and on this episode, we're going to count down the top 5 reasons you should rope drop at Walt Disney World.
There's kind of two schools of thought, right? And this is going to be a 2-part series. Mm-hmm. My wife actually recommended that we do this, and I think it's a really good one.
Yeah, it's a great one.
This week, we're going to talk about the top 5 reasons to rope drop. Next week, top 5 reasons you should sleep in. Because there's benefits to both. I've done both strategies. You?
Yeah, and well, normally no. Like for years and years and years, we always rope drop no matter what.
Right.
And we'll get to some of those reasons when we do our list here.
Yeah.
But more recently, we've changed, and I think for the first time ever, I really do. I think for the first time ever on this last trip, we slept in.
Slept in every day or slept in?
Just once.
Once.
Yeah, one time.
We slept in multiple times this last trip, and it was the first time we had done that. We're a rope drop family, and the nature of being at Animal Kingdom Lodge changes things a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So I would say that's why these strategies are actually important to know both. They're not strategies, but reasonings are important to know for both rope drop and sleep in, because depending on the park and depending on the resort, my strategy would probably change.
Yes. My biggest one too, and this doesn't give away exactly what we do in the list, but a big chunk of if you're going to do A or B depends on your party.
Oh, yeah.
So
I think so.
Yeah. So I highly recommend you listen to both. If you know a friend that's going to be going to Walt Disney World soon, send him or her both episodes.
Yeah, send the planner.
And see what they think.
Yeah. The reality is that I think both are valid strategies. And I'm excited for this one. We're doing it a little differently this week. So normally when Rob and I do a list, we have no clue what the other person has on their list. This week we knew that there's not, we felt like the best way to do this list justice was to combine our lists.
Right. And a lot of times there's so many different options. Like, here's a perfect example. Top 5 rides in Magic Kingdom. Yeah. There's so many different choices.
Yeah.
Or a top 5 favorite dark rides.
Yeah.
This is something that there's really not too many things. There's like 5, 6, 7.
We would have overlapped on pretty much everything.
Yeah, so we just decided to comment and do this one together.
Yeah,
so.
And I think it's going to be great. It's going to provide for some really interesting conversation, because I have different ideas about some of the stuff that we have on our list that maybe Rob doesn't have as that still goes along that same reasoning. But why don't we jump right in with number 5?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Our number 5 is actually, I'm going to let you do this one because I didn't even think of this until you suggested it.
Yeah.
And I thought this was great. And I'm a big fan of Disney Photo Pass and photos in general. I teach a photography class. This never even crossed my mind.
Yeah.
So what was your idea here?
I think one of the best reasons you want to rope drop is for the photos. Whether it be you have Photo Pass and Memory Maker or whatever, and you want to get a better, more empty Main Street photo in Magic Kingdom, or perhaps you just you want to take some cool photography of your own. I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to get a better opportunity than early mornings in those parks. The sunrise is always cool. The way that they've just washed all of the concrete, and it's like this kind of shimmering, so you get some cool effects there. It's empty. There are character meet and greets, and you can certainly do those, but those aren't the photos I'm talking about. It's just so nice to be able to take your family photo in front of the castle and not have a bajillion people behind you.
Yeah, and the nice thing, too, that Disney will do, and if you've been to the park, you've probably seen this before, but really any time during the day, rope drop maybe a little less, but they'll have maybe 5, 6, 7 different Photo Pass photographers along Main Street leading all the way up to the castle.
Yep.
So you can get that family photo, but after rope drop and everybody comes in, usually those lines can get pretty long, and you're standing in the sun.
Yeah.
And your kids are antsy because they want to go on a ride. So the nice thing is, if you know that the rope hasn't dropped yet, you can walk around and go in the shops. Maybe we'll get to that a little bit later too. And you can stand there and get your photo without a long line. And, your kids are not like, let's go on Seven Dwarfs. Well, we can't get in yet, sweetie.
Yeah.
Let's take our picture.
Well, the other thing is, and I don't know if you remember this, but we rope dropped International Gateway.
Yeah.
Do you remember how empty, how absolute, like we went in, we rode Remy.
Yeah.
Left Remy's and walked around World Showcase, and the whole World Showcase is empty because nothing's really open. So if you want like that special picture of a particular part of World Showcase that you're really hoping is not going to be crowded, because you want like a picture of that architecture or a picture of that landscape, you can do it in the morning very easily. If you recall, that was the day we were wearing our themed shirts, our group shirts.
Yes.
And we had on, the shirts with the country.
Mm-hmm. Everyone had a country that best represent them,
and
or
then we
their
took
favorite.
a picture of the person wearing that particular clothing item in the, we'll call it the weenie of their country pavilions.
Like Eiffel Tower in the back for
Right.
France.
Right. And I think that you had Japan.
I was
right?
Japan. You
And
were
so
Canada.
You used what's those? It's a gate. What's it called?
I used to know.
Yeah.
I don't know it
So,
off the top of my head.
The gate in Japan.
Yeah.
My daughter in the phone booth for UK.
Yep.
It's amazing how much better just the park looks at that time when you're not fighting people.
Yeah.
Hollywood Studio is amazing over by Gertie at that time of day. So, I think that the photos really is something you got to take into account.
Yeah. I didn't even think of that one.
Yeah.
That's a great one.
Yeah. Why don't you, since I kicked that one off, why don't you go ahead and tell us about your number 4?
Yeah. Number 4 is something that I've sort of preached for a long time. And this you can do really with or without a rope drop, but it's better if you do it during rope drop, and that is the midday break.
Yep.
Which we do a lot. It's a lot easier if, and for example, when our families went together, we stayed over at the Polynesian, so it was a lot easier for us to do this when we were at Epcot or we were at Magic Kingdom. So we'd go over for the day, walk around. We rope drop. We go hard in the morning. And then we just decide, hey, we're going to take a break, or we're going to swim, or we're going to get a snack. And we go back over to the hotel, we recharge, and then we come back over. So the rope drop benefit here is that you kind of break up your day into 3 parts. Part 1 is early morning park. Part 2 is just chill and recharge. Part 3 is you're feeling better. You go back over and you get to experience those things at night. Another benefit of that too is that sometimes, not always at night, sometimes the crowds are a little bit lower because you'll have families that will rope drop and go hard, and then they're like, okay, we're done. And the kids have melted down and it's over. So it's a good thing to do because you're going to get, the park is going to be a little bit less crowded way early and then later in the day. You have any comments on that one?
And you've taken a lot of the words right out of my mouth, to be perfectly honest, because I agree with that wholeheartedly. I would say I want to add in that if you have park hoppers, so like when I stay, for instance, at a park like Beach Club, or not park, or resort like Beach Club.
Yeah.
Or at the Poly, or at Bay Lake Tower. I'm going to have park hoppers usually because I'm so close to those other parks that on a day that I'm going, say, to Animal Kingdom, I can easily hop over. And so the rope drop strategy that you mentioned, where you rope drop, then part 2 is you come back and relax, and then part 3 is go back to the park.
Part 3 could be
part
anywhere.
3 could be whatever park you want.
That's a good point. And if you're thinking any of those resorts that are in that area there by the boardwalk, any place there, it's really easy to get to 3 of the parks.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Magic Kingdom a little bit less. I mean, it's easiest to get to Epcot. It's right there. Okay, you can go in the International Gateway entrance.
Yep.
You can walk through Epcot to get back to the monorail to go to Magic Kingdom.
You could do that.
Or you could get on the Skyliner and you can zip over to Hollywood Studios that way. Animal Kingdom, it's a little bit harder, but that's a really good point, is breaking up your day that way. And I know this kind of got us off on a tangent, but all these are great tips for people who are looking to take their families.
And that's why when you say, rope dropping and then that opens up the idea of the midday break, I think you're right. And the reality is you can dodge some of that weather. You can go and relax in a pool. Or if you woke up so early that you're tired or whatever, you go back, relax, take a nap, and then come back and go hard at night. This is a strategy I would use, the rope drop and the close down kind of thing. Yeah. Where you rope drop, you take a midday break and you close it down. I would especially use this for those parks like Magic Kingdom when I'm staying in the Magic Kingdom area, or Epcot when I'm staying in the Epcot area, or Hollywood Studios if I'm staying in that same area. Because the reality is that you are right. People don't necessarily wake up early on vacation, so the rope drop time is a little bit less crowded. Yeah. And then people burn out and go home, and they don't stay till close. So you're going to have a little bit better window there. So I think the midday break recommendation and the fact that you mentioned the midday break as being part of the strategy of rope drop is super important. I mean, the reality is this too, that you can also build in it can be a money saving hack too, because you can build your midday break around your lunch back at your resort. Yeah. And I'm not saying that's what we do, but I'm saying that is something you could look at it as. If we rope drop, we can go until about lunchtime, head back to the resort, have lunch that we have, a cheaper lunch we got because we got delivery or something. We got a Amazon delivery or a Publix delivery. Eat a cheaper lunch and then go back later. I think that's a possibility too.
Well, and with the rising costs of Disney, and as much as I love it, it's getting close to the point where it's getting hard to afford. Yeah. And we talk about that a lot. I still love it, but that's a really good point is, save a couple bucks, do it that way.
The pools are oftentimes too less crowded in the middle of the day because people are at the parks. That's true. That's another reason. You want to head off to the halftime show?
Yeah, let's head off to the break, and when we come back, we will do our 3, 2, and 1 reasons to rope drop at Walt Disney World.
Sounds good. Welcome back.
You're always waiting to see if I do that or not. I'm always waiting to see if he does it. Not all the time.
Yeah, welcome back. That halftime show was brought to you by our patrons over at patreon.com/DizListPod. Yep. Go over there and check it out. Yeah, you can join for free, and you could be added to our close friends list on Instagram. And then for a nominal charge, you can also get early access to new episodes as well as bonus content every week.
Yep. We do a second full episode for people who are our Patreon.
People who don't get sick of us from the first episode.
Some people don't.
Yeah,
some people go, I want more of Rob and Nick.
Yeah, that episode.
Not many people say that.
No, our students definitely don't. That episode is audio only, but this one is obviously available on YouTube as well. So if you didn't know that, you can go over to youtube.com/DizListPod over there and check us out there. We'd love a subscription and a follow, and that would be great. So our top 3. Number 3.
Number 3 is one that I think is really important to know, and it really has to do with the ages of your party, and I mentioned that a little bit earlier. Yeah. If you have younger kids, normally it's kind of like Christmas morning. That's my closest thing I can compare being at Disney to, is waking up on Christmas morning or Hanukkah for those who celebrate. Eyes open up, they're excited, they're ready to go. Younger kids will rise and shine very early. Teens, we will get to in another episode, I'm sure, but they are up ready to go. So for younger kids, they are up early and ready to go. So a lot of times it's better to bring those kids over and rope drop and go early. And the other thing about the younger kids too is they burn out a lot quicker. So if you don't, here's an example. Okay, a friend of mine, a listener, my friend Brian, I talked to him before he left on his trip. I said, man, you got to do the midday break. You got to do it. You got to do it. And he was like, oh, we'll play it by ear. We'll see. He wasn't saying no. But then after talking to him about the trip, he's like, yeah, it's, that would have been nice because the kids got burned out.
Of course they did.
And the nice thing is his wife would bring the kids back to the hotel. And he also went with our other buddy, Vinny, and then the two of them would stay. The two guys would stay a little bit later, which is fine. But it's a good thing to remember that kids can get burned out a little earlier. And if you want to build in that midday break, you can, which we talked about earlier. That was our number 4. But sometimes it's good to just go really early and do as much as you can, and that's always better for younger kids.
I did the strategy, especially when they're really young. Like my first trip, my daughter was 3, and my son was 7, and it was like very, it's a lot. It's a lot of walking. It's a lot of, you really should train your kids in the walking, the amount of walking they're going to do.
Yeah. And myself.
Yeah, that too. But when you're at a park that is going to involve some long transportation back home or back to the room, my strategy has always been you rope drop, especially with young kids. You rope drop, you go until you can tell they're right on that precipice of like, I'm done. Now, then you can just go home and you don't feel like you lost out on anything because you got those extra hours in. I will say this is dependent upon the number of that strategy in particular is dependent upon the number of days you're there. So if you're there and you only have 1 day at Magic Kingdom, then you're probably going to be looking at our number 4 reason more so than our number 3 reason.
Yeah.
But if you're there and you're going to be at Magic Kingdom 2 days, you might you might split the park in half and say, I'm going to do the left side of the park today and I'm going to do the right side of the park tomorrow, kind of a thing.
Well, another part of that too that I just thought of now when you mentioned that is, let's say you're doing a trip and your hotel is near Universal Studios or SeaWorld. So, up iDrive somewhere, right?
Okay.
And you're far away. But if you're at Magic Kingdom, it's not really easy to get to the parking lot. It's not really easy to get all the way back home. That trip home could take an hour and a half, depending.
I wasn't even thinking about staying off property, honestly. And
some people do, and that's a cost-saving measure.
100. I wasn't even thinking about the fact of that. And that changes things drastically.
Yeah.
And so for me, going earlier with the kids while they're still chipper, right, is going to make your life a lot easier too. And so it's not even about like go early with the kids because they're up and you just want to get it done with, but think about when they're in their best mood, right? And if your kid's not a morning kid, then this isn't for you.
No.
Right? But if your kid's a morning person, or if your kid's on a school schedule, for instance, and is used to getting up at 6 a.m. so they can get ready to get on the bus, to me, like this is a no-brainer because you go, they're in their best mood then. You go until maybe you have lunch in the park, a small little quick service, or maybe you have a sit down in the park. But you go until like let's say 2 or so, and that's when it starts to get a little crazy hot or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you can bounce out, and you're gonna get plenty of stuff done in a park like Animal Kingdom. Okay, you're gonna get everything done.
Yeah.
And you're not that far behind that in Hollywood Studios. When we went, we rope dropped Hollywood Studios.
Yeah.
We had, what was it called then? It was Genie Plus then, I guess, when we went together, and we finished everything by 2:00. We had done everything.
Yep.
By 2:00. So it's something to consider is, going early with the idea of just, it's better for the people in your party if they're morning people, and kids tend to be those people. So that brings us to number 2.
Which you just mentioned, and I think this is a perfect segue for that, is our number 2 is if you go early in the morning, it's not as hot. It's still hot, but it's not as hot. So there's a lot of benefits here. And I want to add on to this, and this wasn't on the list, but this also just popped in my head too, is if you're going during certain times of the year, you get that rain.
Oh, that's
part of it too. Let's just change number 2 to weather.
I wrote weather.
Did you?
Yeah, I wrote weather.
Well, that's
it's
good.
not just the heat; it's the whole shebang.
Yeah, it's that crazy rain that at least I know from the summer months. 4:00 rolls around, it comes down in sheets, and on our trip, I didn't think it was going to rain because it was later at night, and we got soaked then too. But so weather is a big part of it. Does it pour in the morning? Sure, it's gonna rain at any point, but you can almost count on that happening in midday. If you go earlier in the day, it's going to be a little bit cooler. depending on the month.
Yeah.
I mean, you can wake up and it's going to be pretty hot and pretty humid early on, but the weather is a huge factor of coming early.
I agree.
But the last point I'll make too is I can remember a trip where there's a photo my wife took of us leaving at 10 o'clock at night, and we're getting ready for the boat, and I'm wearing a tank top, and I am dripping with sweat at 10 o'clock at night, and we checked what the temperature was. It was still humid, and it was 90 degrees at 10 o'clock at night.
And that's 90 degrees red with a, wasn't red inside the park. That 90 degrees is like, in Orlando. Like when you think about the radiant heat off of that concrete, and it's a very big part of your experience at Walt Disney World is you're going to deal with some sort of weather at some point in your trip, even if you go in the cooler months. I think rope dropping to save yourself the headache of the weather is super important.
Yep.
And it's not just because you can leave the park, but like, let's say you rope drop, right? And you go and do rides and you're doing your stuff that's really the hot, the stuff that makes you hot. You do that all morning long, and lunchtime hits or whatever, 2 o'clock, let's say it's 2 o'clock, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've been snacking all day. 2 o'clock, okay, it's really hot. We don't want to leave the park. Let's get a sit down. So you sit down. You don't feel as bad giving up that hour because you rope dropped, right?
Yeah, and you...
Go ahead.
Well, it was going to lead to number one, but I'll wait. Yeah. You finish.
Yeah. And then after that, what you can do is you can leave and go, now I don't feel so bad sitting down to watch this show, watch this parade, go and do this attraction. For some reason, for myself anyway, I sometimes when I rope drop am like really averse to doing things like in the morning anyway, like the Lion King, Festival of the Lion King.
Yeah.
Or doing a show like not the Little Mermaid, Nemo. Okay, Big Blue and Beyond.
Yep.
Because those shows are taking up a valuable part of your day, right? It takes a sizable chunk of time, and it's at a time when the ride lines are less. So for me, like by going early, you beat the weather, but that doesn't mean you have to go back. It means that you save those air conditioning moments
for when you need
them, and you need them from 2 to 5.
Yeah,
and then maybe it gets a little bit better. Even doing the parade, right? If you rope drop, and you're going hard, right? And then the parade comes, you can sit and like go on Main Street, go into the Emporium, and I hear the parade coming, pop out for the parade with the kiddos, but you were in the Emporium the whole time, and then the parade goes by. You've already done a lot of your rides, and the reason you've already done your rides is,
which is our number one, and our number one reason is you can do more with shorter waits. So when the rope drops, okay, I'm not talking about early morning entry. That's something a little bit different. So if you're staying, and I should probably explain this now for our listeners
here.
If you were staying at I'm not sure if it's it changes all the time. Is it a deluxe resort or just a Walt Disney resort?
Walt Disney Resort, and
or a good neighbor,
good neighbors, and stuff like that.
They will let you in a half an hour, a period of time
30
before,
minutes,
before they let in the rest of the crowd,
general public,
general public here. So that's kind of a nice benefit if you're staying on property. But if you're not, it's still okay. It's still okay if you're staying off property. Let's go back to the person that's staying over by Universal or SeaWorld, and they come over. They get in a half an hour after the rest of the guests. The lines are still very, very short. They're letting everybody in, mostly. So let's say you're not going to Tron or you're not going to Seven Dwarfs or Tiana's. You can hit up some of those other rides. You can probably do, and I feel like I've done this before, in an hour, you could do 4 or 5, maybe more rides within that amount of time if you're strategic and you're hitting things like the carousel, like Little Mermaid, like maybe Winnie the Pooh, maybe Small World, right?
I said what I wrote down when I wrote this on my list, that for short line, and that's a benefit, was I double underlined overrated rides. So I personally would head to the rides that I know are overrated. So for me, Peter Pan's Flight tops that list.
Sure.
Because it's going to be at some point in that day, it's going to be 80 to 90 minutes long to ride that ride.
Right.
It is not an 80 to 90 minute long ride or long wait. It shouldn't be. Over in Animal Kingdom, I think of Navi River Journey.
Right.
So
living with the land.
Well,
just kidding. I'm kidding.
No,
Keep going. I had to throw in a joke there.
But there are overrated rides. I would almost put Frozen Ever After into that conversation.
Yeah, it's a good ride, but sometimes you look at the length and
yeah,
I look at it this way. If I'm looking at the time and I go, well, that's a really long wait, we'll do it next time. If I can live with it and do it again next time, and I'm like that with Mine Train sometimes too.
Oh, 100%.
There are some rides I cannot live without. But if I look at it, like Frozen's one of them, Mine Train's one of them. I like them. They're great rides.
Yeah, but
if I know I'm coming back again next year, I'm like, I'll ride it next year.
Yeah.
And then we do.
It's those are fun rides, but those are the rides to me that I save my rope drop time for.
Yeah.
Now, if you are at Magic Kingdom, for instance, and you are not staying on property, so you're not part of the early morning entry, you need to turn left. You just need to, because everybody else who did the early morning entry was able to get into Fantasyland and Tomorrowland.
And they all kind of go to the right-hand side, yeah.
If they're all over there, you want to go and start lining up at the rope heading into Adventureland.
Yeah.
So like that little bridge there.
Yep.
That's where I would personally go. Or possibly maybe go around like in Fantasyland and wait over by Liberty Square, because I think that's about where it starts.
Like Sleepy Hollow?
Yeah, I think that's where I've never rope dropped over on that side.
Yeah, I have.
I've always, if I was going to rope drop in that side of the park, I'm going to that bridge over to Adventureland.
Yeah.
But like, you want to line up there if you're not doing early morning entry. If you are doing early morning entry, because that is a lot of people as well.
There's a couple strategies.
You're gonna show up probably and be like, why did I rope drop? I'm way at the back of this line. And what you have to recognize is that stuff's getting split up. Yeah. I promise you, it feels like I have been backed up all like way down by the bridge into Tomorrowland and been like, what did I do? This was a dumb decision.
Yeah.
And I still got on the ride like that.
Yeah.
So you just have to understand that there's a lot more capacity in those rides than you think there is, and that it looks like a lot of people, but it's really not.
Let's use Mine Train, for example. When they finally open the doors and you get around the corner to where Seven Dwarfs Mine Train is, this probably won't make sense if you're new and you haven't been to the park before. But if you're looking at that, the line is going to wrap all the way around past Mad Tea Party. Sometimes it goes all the way back by Little Mermaid. If that's the line in the middle of the day, that's not good.
No.
But if they're rope dropping and you're getting in line, and we did this last time, the line for us right after rope drop, the end of the line was right about the entrance to where Mad Tea Party is. And
That's not bad.
My wife was like, I don't know if we're going to be able. I said, here's what's happening. And this is the secret here, folks. What's happening is everyone is going into the queue. So the queue is empty.
Right.
That line seems like it's really long, but then it starts snaking through and they start letting people on the ride.
It's one of those ones where you don't stop walking.
Right. And you just walk and walk and walk. And I think the only time we really stopped is when we got to the part where they have the diamond spinners, and that's kind of where we actually started waiting, was right about there. So it actually went pretty quickly.
That tracks, because I will say that so I have not done it where I've had to wait in line when I've done that particular ride, except for one time when we were going for extended evening hours. So we were there for our deluxe resort. I think it's extended evening hours. But I basically, what happens there is they kind of like stop the line and don't let anybody else in.
Yeah.
They clear the line of all the regular day guests, and then they open it up. Okay, now it's time. Then they start scanning and tapping people in. And we were at about where you're talking. And we ended up being stopped right on not the first time around. So like we kept walking in on the far side of the spinning barrels, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so you're really, that's pretty decent into the queue at that point.
Yep.
I think it was a 15-minute wait that night. It was well worth it. But like, that's a big part of it is, somebody said to me, so you're telling me you're going to go and stand and wait in line so that you don't have to wait in line? And my answer is yes.
Yeah.
And when they say, well, I don't understand that, I didn't pay for that part of the wait.
Yeah.
When I'm waiting in line during the day, this is time that I have paid for. I have paid for my entry ticket that is good from, let's say it's 8 a.m. till 8 p.m.
Sure.
If I'm waiting in line inside the park day, in between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., I'm literally paying to stand in line.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm waiting in line at 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., I have not paid for that time.
Right. That's a bonus.
And so when they let me in, and now I can walk onto Rock and Roller Coaster, Tower of Terror,
That's a good point.
Minnie and Mickey's, Rise of the Resistance, all these rides that have waits during the day, long waits during the day. There's a reason I picked those 4 is because those rides can have long waits during the day.
Yeah.
And they are essentially walk-ons during rope drop, especially during early entry. So yeah, heck yeah, I'm gonna not pay for the hour that I'm waiting, and then I'm gonna go in and be in and on rides that normally I would be waiting for an hour for time that I'm paying for.
Right.
So yeah, I am gonna wait to wait. I'm gonna wait to not wait. I should say. I know it's the dumbest sounding thing in the world.
It makes sense.
But you know how it is.
Yeah.
Like we both would do it. I know that you've probably got some honorable mentions.
Yeah, I have one, and
because I do.
Mine was you get to enjoy breakfast options in the park. So if you go early, a lot of times people are going to try to hit up as many rides as you can, and yeah. I do too. But some of the restaurants you can get their different breakfast options in the morning, which is some different and unique things. I don't want to go through every restaurant only because it's this is just an honorable mention, but it's a nice way to get something a little different off the menu of a restaurant that you would normally maybe just get a burger at or something like that. So
well, and the other thing is too that so I also put that on my honorable mentions was stopping to get a coffee, and perfect example. This last trip, middle of the day, we were kind of starting to get worn down. My wife was on Main Street USA, texts me, "You want anything? I'm going to go get a coffee." And I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Now this was my first mistake. We were walking by the Joffrey stand, and my brother had just said, "I really want cold brew." And I was like, "Oh, we'll go get some cold brew." There's like 2 people in line. And then she texted me that. And I was like, "Would you rather have Starbucks?" He's like, "Yeah." So we ordered Starbucks. 45 minutes later, we got our Starbucks. Now, here's the thing. I think Starbucks is like that everywhere. It's my biggest gripe about any Starbucks I've ever been to everywhere is that I've been to one Starbucks that didn't take 30 minutes to make a coffee. And it doesn't matter if there's 0 people in there or 100 people in there. It's always forever. And that's my biggest gripe with them. This particular day, it was super hot and we're standing out in the heat. And I'm like, why didn't I just say, forget it. We're going to, sorry, I'm going to pause for a second because there is a cardinal.
My wife just posted about this the other day.
There is a cardinal pounding the window behind Rob. I hope this shows up on YouTube. I'm going to be very careful, and I'm going to make sure that I go through and scrub the footage for it. Anyway.
I'm trying to move out of the way so we can see it.
Yeah. The coffee is it's not that much better to get it from Starbucks. So if you're a Starbucks person, the morning time, it's not packed. That's the time to get it. It isn't packed at that time. You know what I'm saying? So you're not wrong there.
Yeah.
It's stopping to get a coffee, stopping to get a bite to eat. I have another one on my honorable mention that kind of tracks into this is that by going early and shifting your schedule, you can shift all of your stuff to off times. So it might be really difficult to get that Jungle Skipper reservation at 12 noon. It might be really difficult to get that reservation for Tepanetto or for Via Napoli at a time that makes sense for most human beings in the free world for when they eat. But if you can shift it just an hour or 30 minutes sometimes, all of a sudden that reservation is not hard to get. It's not difficult to get. And so by going and doing rope drop, you might be able to shift your entire schedule a little bit.
A nice point with that, too, and I'm going to try to move out of the way in case the Cardinal tries to attack us again, too. So another nice point to that is, let's say you're a West Coaster.
Yeah.
And you're on a different time zone or, you're from the Midwest. that's another nice point too, is that you can get a reservation at a different time because you're used to eating dinner at a different time.
Yeah, I mean, the tough part there is that, with the time change for them, rope drop might be a little bit more difficult for them.
Yeah.
So,
or their breakfast is, if you're 3 hours different, if you're coming from California, it'd be harder.
Well, if you're coming from California and you can somehow get your kids up at that hour, then potentially it's worthwhile for you to do the rope drop and then eat your breakfast at 10 a.m., which is your 7 a.m. Like that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's just that's one of my things. Is the shift of the schedule is another reason. I already talked about my other one, which was doing the rides early and the shows later. That kind of got lumped into the idea of the midday break or the better for kids. So do you have any other honorable mentions?
No, this is one of those ones where there's definite reasons, and there aren't like 40 different ones that we can kind of, subjectively come up with. So
right. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to next week's too, because I think that one's going to also have a lot of, we're going to have a lot. We're going to do the list the same way because we're going to have a lot of overlap otherwise. Mm-hmm. But there are benefits to both. So don't watch this and say, well, they say I should rope drop for these reasons. Well, next week we're going to tell you should sleep in for some reasons too. And there's plenty of reasons to do that as well.
Yep.
And it all depends on who your party is, where you're staying. I think all those things matter. But you should reach out if you have questions about this episode over at DizListPod on Instagram. You can check us out on patreon.com/DizListPod. You can also go over to YouTube, give us a like, a subscribe, and if you're already watching us on YouTube, if you give us a thumbs up on this button, that would be great. Thumbs up on this video, that would be great. But it's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. Tomorrow's just a list away.
Tune in next time, and we'll see you real soon.